Welcome to the Stormsurf Video Surf Forecast for Sunday, March 23rd. Brought to you by Vunabaka.com, a new residential community in Fiji close to great surfing. First up, we'll take a look at the North Pacific Significant Wave Height chart. We see a gale developing in the Gulf of Alaska, 25 foot seas, aimed mainly towards the U.S. West Coast. Otherwise, another small disorganized area of what is presumed to be low pressure, 18-foot seas off Kamchatka. And other than that, it's pretty quiet. Take a look at the jet stream level winds. These direct storm formation, help fuel storm development, and also help dictate the direction that storms travel. First up, we see a pocket of 140 knot winds off Japan, consolidated jet stream, a little bit of a split though as it reaches towards the date line, but most energy managing to make it over the date line, arching over the date line, falling into a trough here in the Gulf of Alaska. What is that, 120 knot winds feeding what is low pressure down at the surface, and then ridging up and into British Columbia. Split flow though, remaining energy pretty much tracking over Hawaii into Baja. This is a very similar pattern to what's been going on all year. Only for a short while did we actually get a consolidated flow that pushed the whole way across the Pacific. But now that we're kind of late in the season, again, the split has developed, and this is not unexpected. Let's put this into motion, see how things move for the next week. That low up in the Gulf is heading east into Monday and pretty much fades out, but still some lingering evidence of the trough. Split still hanging, not particularly well defined. Winds start backing off Japan. We're into Tuesday night, Wednesday, and by Thursday we're into basically a zonal flow, a weak zonal flow at that too. Winds down to 110 knots in the highest pockets, pretty much flat west to east flow. Sort of a weak trough here in the Gulf, but no winds to really support gale formation. Roll that out. Again, the split tries to develop same spot over the date line by Friday, but doesn't quite make it. We get a bit of a trough here on Sunday. That's Sunday the 30th off Kamchatka. A little bit of winds there supporting 160 knots, but generally the jet looks like it's falling apart, not doing a whole lot. In fact, it goes fully split there again by late Sunday. That's a week out, and a little bit of a trough here off the U.S. West Coast. That's maybe good for another shot of weather, which would be good. Any precipitation into the U.S. West Coast would be very welcome. But in all, late season pattern, wind energy levels in the jet falling off. It's starting to fall apart, not looking very promising to support storm or gale development. Down at the surface, we see, in fact, low pressure, Gulf of Alaska, 35 knot winds. This is what's generating the 24, 25 foot seas we saw in the Gulf. Mainly aimed towards the U.S. West Coast, 285 degree track into Northern California, and about the 290 degree track into Southern California. Not a whole lot at Hawaii. Most of the energy has passed the islands. We can actually go back and see, even when this thing first started forming, it was pretty well. All the energy was east of the islands even then. So we'll put this into motion, see what plays out here for the next several days. That low continues to push east into Monday, 35 knot winds. This is not much of a swell producer, but good for probably 13-second period swell for the U.S. West Coast by about midweek. Continues to, and some rain too, more than expected into Central California Tuesday, Wednesday time frame. Another low comes in, tries to move into the same area, barely gets 30 knot winds and peters out. Still, it's nudged right up here to the U.S. West Coast, so that's good. Nothing going on back here, but not high pressure either. There's sort of this blocking high north of Hawaii. It looks like it's good for wind swell into the islands. Play this out, and then we're into next weekend. Pattern starts breaking up a little bit relative to California. New low pressure here, one off Kamchatka, one over Japan. Let's see what happens. We've got a little bit here. Get a decent, this actually is looking better than what was previously suspected. So a little bit of a low here over the date line, 55 knot winds over a tiny area, and another gale here. Actually, that's a storm. This is a gale here off Japan. 45 knot winds, but not really aimed anywhere. Kind of a diffuse pattern, and I suspect the models are a bit on the optimistic side. At the same time, high pressure, 1028 millibar, moving towards the U.S. West Coast. Trades, east-northeast trades into the islands by next weekend at almost 20 knots. So not looking too promising at that level. Let's go see what effect these winds have on the ocean surface. So to the significant wave height charts, 25-foot seas currently modeled north-northeast to Hawaii on the 83-degree track to Northern California, on the 290-degree track to Southern California. So that's good for some probably 14 second period swell pushing into California, but probably not a whole lot for Hawaii, as we suspected. It's all east of there. We can actually roll back and see if anything. There was just the faintest hint of 24-foot seas on the 7-degree track. None of it pushing towards Hawaii. Doubtful anything but very small sideband swell. So let's put this into motion, see how it sort of rolls out over the next... Oh, look at that. By Sunday night, it's supposed to redevelop. 22, 24, 26-foot seas here. Again, towards the U.S. West Coast, pretty much on the same tracks. 285 for Northern California and the 294 for Southern California. A little bit too north to be optimal. And this is actually a significant upgrade from previous runs of the model. This suggests possibly decent swell pushing into U.S. West Coast by probably Wednesday. That would be good news. Otherwise, pretty lackadaisical pattern beyond that. We'll roll this out. Another little gale tries to get going in the Gulf. Barely 20-foot seas on Wednesday, Thursday, and it all just sort of peters out and doesn't do a whole lot. And then you're waiting till Sunday till these next two series of systems get going, and we're out to pretty much the limits of the model. But this holds. If it were to develop, we're on the 298-degree track to Hawaii, a little bit too west there, and this one's probably a little bit too north to get optimally down in there. But it gives us some hope for the future if one's to believe the models. Though the ocean's surface hasn't been doing a whole lot in terms of storm production, or at least is not forecast to over the next week, there's been a lot of chatter about what's going on in the tropics, specifically the West Pacific. Notice a long run here. We can go off the chart. We're into the 22nd of February. Negative numbers almost every day, and it's been holding up till about now. It's still negative, but it looks like the negative SOI, this means lower pressure over Tahiti, higher pressure over Darwin. Long stretches of negative numbers suggest El Nino at a bare minimum. The active phase of the MJO and the active phase of the MJO, of course, support storm development in the North Pacific during winter months. So we've been going through a good long run of what looks to be the active phase of the MJO, negative SOI daily numbers. So it makes one suspicious that maybe an El Nino is trying to get going, but lately it looks like that's sort of bottomed out and is starting to rebound back towards perhaps neutral territory. The 30-day average has been continually dropping down to 13.5. It's starting to rebound a little bit. The 90-day average, this is what you really want to look at for El Nino, has finally just reached neutral. So from all the chatter, all the hype that's been flying around, the reality is we're just now in a neutral pattern per the Southern Oscillation Index. But the Southern Oscillation Index is also kind of a lagging indicator. Things happen well in advance of the SOI, and it doesn't react till later. So, but as of right now, sort of looking neutral. So let's take a look at wind anomalies. These are wind variations as compared to normal. Tropical Pacific, roughly from 3 degrees north to 3 degrees south. That's the main area. You can go as far as maybe 5 or something like that, but mainly westerly anomalies is what you want to see. The stronger the anomalies, the better, especially in the West Pacific. This helps create Kelvin waves, and we'll get into that in a little bit. As of right now, almost a neutral pattern in the far West Pacific. Slight modest west anomalies over the date line, pushing a little bit east of the date line, and then pretty much same thing as what we've been seeing. It kind of hits a brick wall around 165, and then in the past we've been seeing easterly anomalies here. We do not see that now, just kind of a neutral pattern. And in general, both these westerlies have died off and the easterlies here have died off, and it sort of suggests that the whole thing that we've been going through for the past it's almost 3 months now, which is strong westerly winds, outright westerly winds, kind of dying down. We're taking a pause for a bit. Probably not unexpected, and you know, that's the way things go. They move in cycles. A week out, the forecast still calls, though, for slight westerly anomalies in the West Pacific. There's the Philippines are out here, Australia down here. That's better than easterly anomalies for sure. Neutral over the date line, and then pretty much neutral the whole way across the Pacific into Central America. So definitely kind of a relaxation of the pattern that we've been going through. But still, no easterly anomalies, so that's good. Way better than we've been for years, so we'll take anything we can get. So here's the sort of a different view. Again, we've talked about this in the past. Right here would be like the Philippines, well West Pacific. Here would be the East Pacific. Reds are westerly anomalies. You can see about back a month, strong westerly anomalies. This is westerly wind burst number 2 for the year. And then we're almost started westerly wind burst number 3. It's much weaker than the previous one. And there was yet another one back in January. So, but really a steady, non-stop progression of westerly anomalies, if not outright westerly winds. And notice also that it's creeping a little bit to the east. And the forecast has it going, continuing a little bit, but very weak. The blues are easterly anomalies. You see little bits of it, but a much more favorable pattern for the development of Kelvin waves. So here's a different view. The yellows, oranges are out. This is outgoing long wave radiation. Yellows and oranges are higher reflectivity, clear skies, decreased precipitation in the atmosphere, and typical of high pressure, and one could also presume to be weak easterly anomalies. Blues are westerly anomalies. So this looks like the inactive phase of the MJO, pretty much hanging over the West Pacific. It's forecast for the next 2 weeks. Not unexpected, seeing how we've had literally 3 months of non-stop westerly anomalies and the active phase of the MJO. A little breather would not be unexpected. That is the statistic model. The dynamic model, a little bit more aggressive, a little bit stronger inactive phase of the MJO, with the active phase here hanging over Africa and trying to make its way east. The statistical model has the active phase building a little bit, but not particularly strong, and it almost suggests that we're falling back into this kind of a neutral pattern where it's neither inactive nor active, just kind of in between. So the next couple of weeks are going to kind of be interesting to see how this plays out, especially how we just had so much activity in January, February, and March. Lots of westerly winds, Kelvin wave activity like mad, and it seemed like a run-up to a big El Nino developing, but it sort of looks like the plug is getting pulled on it as of right now. The 40-day look, this is up at the upper atmosphere, 200 millibar. Again, the yellows and oranges are basically conditions not favorable for precipitation. So you see basically the active phase of the MJO moving east into Central America through about the 2nd of April, and then this weak kind of inactive phase thing going on down into the 17th of April, and then a new, what appears to be a weak active phase developing about mid-April and going on into May. The interesting part is this model is not very good at it gives you the general trend, but it doesn't really drill down and give you it's reactive to when the active phase gets really strong. It takes a couple days for the model to pick it up. So this is not a good harbinger or not a good indicator of the strength of what's to come, more just the general trend. So that sort of lays it out. It looks like we're falling back, though, into kind of a normal pattern. Of note, back to the Southern Oscillation Index. Notice this is 2 years worth of data. Back in the summer of 2012, we almost thought we were going into an El Nino, a bunch of negative kind of numbers. And then slowly into 2013, things just kept rising and rising. We were almost in La Nina for all practical purposes, even through the winter, until January when, look at this, just a tremendous drop. Now the question is, where is it going from here? Is it going to muddle around down here? Is it also suddenly going to rebound and go up back into positive territory? The guess would be probably it's not going up here. If anything, it'll rebound, move to neutral, but the hope is that it hangs somewhere down in this region and then only gets enhanced as we move into the summer. But that's nobody knows. We're in the thing called the spring unpredictability barrier. It runs basically from late March into late May, early June. The models have a really hard time figuring out what's going on because of the way the atmosphere reacts this time of year, and it can go one way or the other. But going into the spring unpredictability barrier with a long negative run is a good sign. It suggests that this whole La Nina thing is probably well done with, and that at a minimum we're into a neutral phase that'll continue into the fall and winter months of 2014, but who knows? That's just a guess on our part. But this is kind of a key time to watch the next month or two. There's been some talk about some sort of a super El Nino developing. That would be way premature based on just SOI numbers and model numbers. At this time, it's just speculation. So for now, let's say neutral, and that's the expectation, and anything that's negative of that is a gift. But certainly if you're into negative numbers in the summer to early fall, even 30-day average in the 5 to 10 range, that's really good. That would bode very well for a decent winter to follow. Next, we'll take a look at sea surface temperature anomalies. What you're really interested in is this area right here, the same 3 degrees north and 3 degrees south of the equator, and pretty much from not even the date line, but south of Hawaii, right in this area. Warmer water temperatures in here are indicative of El Nino. Cooler waters, La Nina. First glance, one would go, sure looks like La Nina. Cooler water temperatures, the blues are, they're not strong blues. What's really interesting is this pocket of much cooler water that's starting to migrate off of Peru towards the Galapagos Islands. That would be at a minimum indicative of the inactive phase of the MJO, and given how much westerly winds have been going on here and what else has been going on in the West Pacific, it's actually kind of surprising that there's even any cold water left here, because as you'll see, there's a lot of warm water buildup underneath this area of the Pacific. But for now, cool waters, trying to get a foothold again off of Peru towards the Galapagos. This is a previous incarnation of the same thing. It's been taking quite a while just to get things back down to normal, and it's basically neutral, pockets of warm, pockets of cool, but kind of a wash right in this area. Big pocket of cool water here, though, of course, coming off Chile and sort of radiating and advecting off this way. North Pacific, again, lots of warm water the whole way from Japan to the U.S. West Coast, down. This whole area is just packed full of warmer than normal water, and it's been a long time since we've had that. There's no evidence of any high pressure or upwelling going on here off the U.S. West Coast. Trades are suppressed, and there's the usual warm water here, but it's kind of built up towards the date line. We'll get into that in a minute. Also off of Africa, no teleconnecting cool pool. Sometimes you can get cool water here. It also shows up here, but nothing particularly stands out. So kind of a mixed bag. Kind of interested to see what the next update will be here. It should show up on Monday or Tuesday, and see if this is actually making any progress in building or whether it kind of gets cut off. Unknown at this point, though. Here's another view, the same thing. Notice, so this is actual water temperatures. Here's real anomalous water temperatures. Notice the 0 degree line is just hovering right around the equator, a little bit almost warm, but not really. between 120, so that's about south of Southern California, and the dateline or so. So pretty much neutral in this version. And notice the light west wind anomalies here in the far west Pacific, and even little hints still of actual west winds, but not particularly strong. The dividing line is about on the dateline. Of course, the chart that everyone's interested in is subsurface water temperatures. Particularly, these are the actual water temperatures, but these are the deviations from normal. Notice 5.5 degree, a pocket of 5.5 degree above normal water temperatures pushing from west to east. This is the West Pacific over here. This is the East Pacific. Also notice the little X's here. This is the 95 and the 110 west TOA buoy array sensors are online. Notice there's effectively no cool water here anymore. The assumption is that, so this is a massive Kelvin wave that developed from westerly wind anomalies that occurred in January, February, and March. It's pushing towards the east. Notice there's warm water building up in this image here, also pushing into Central America, 2 degrees above normal. It sort of depends how you view this. There's some ambiguity because there aren't sensors here and here. They're offline. NOAA's down there trying to get the array up and running and getting more of the buoys operational so that we can get a little bit more definition as to what's going on with the Kelvin waves. So this is just an approximation. Still, this is a really good sign. You want to see this water moving into Central America. It'll hit the surface, gurgle up, and start then radiating back to the west along the equator, carried by trades. The more warm water, the more the trades slacken, and then that sets up a reinforcing pattern. If the trades back off, then you can get more westerlies in the west, more Kelvin wave creation, more warm water building up, and that's how you get an El Nino, this sort of a reinforcing flow of warm water going this way, pushing off the coast, slackening trades, and then it just starts feeding on itself. Whether that's going to happen, no one knows. There's no evidence that suggests it will at the moment, but clearly the event that just happened in January, February, and March was significant. It's evidenced by this, and this is a good sign. Here's another depiction of the same thing, subsurface water temperature anomalies. 5+ degrees. This has a more continuous flow pushing up towards 100 west towards Central America. There's that little cool pocket there, subsurface down about 100 meters. But this clearly says here's the warm water being pushed down by the western anomalies, building up here, and then working its way east, gurgling up on the surface. How all this plays out, whether this is how real all this is, no one knows, but it is an extremely good sign. Also, yet one other version. So this is from the Jason 2 satellite, makes multiple passes over the equator, and if you have warm water at depth, it actually, because warm water expands, it pushes the ocean's surface up. We have a 10-centimeter rise in surface height from actually west of the dateline to 140, so that's even beyond, that's even east of Hawaii, and even out to about 105 west, so that's south of Baja and then some. So that's subsurface wise, that's a pretty good pool of warm water there. Now again, how that plays out, who knows? How it's going to manifest itself, we don't know. And finally, the ocean surface Nino 3.4 area. That's roughly the same area we've been looking at previously. Water temperature forecast changes from normal. Supposedly, by now, water temperatures are supposed to be neutral and are only supposed to get warmer up to 1.5 degrees. Anything above about half a degree, some people say 3/4 of a degree, are indicative of El Nino. This model says we'll be in an El Nino by October. Well, actually way before then, by probably theoretically June or July, coming out of the spring unpredictability barrier. But again, this is a rather optimistic view of the world. This model has been predicting some sort of El Nino for a year or two now, so hard to say, But other models are tending to favor El Nino development as well. How strong, no one knows, whether it's a weak one, strong one, or very strong, undetermined at this point in time. The best bet is watch it. I would say by June-ish time frame, we'll have a much better handle on how all this plays out coming out of the spring unpredictability barrier. And then we'll have a sense of where we're going. But at this point in time, way more favorable than it's been for years since the last El Nino. It's still actually early, considering most El Ninos don't form till about 5 years or more, 5 to 7 years after the previous El Nino, and we're only in about 3 going into 4 years since the last one in 2009-2010. So this would be good if it happened. The downside with having a good El Nino is right behind it. You just about always get La Nina, and you're back into cold water and suppressed storm and swell development in the Pacific. So be careful what you ask for. The preferred outcome is a weak El Nino that lasts multiple years, culminating in a strong El Nino. That way you get 3 or 4 or at least 2 or 3 years of good storm and weather and rain into the U.S. West Coast, rather than just one giant event or even a modest event and then back into a suppressed weather pattern. So anyway, that's where we're at for now. We'll keep our eyes on all the indicators, see what the long-term projections are. For now, it sort of looks like winter is winding down. There's still opportunities for some swell development, especially if the active phase of the MJO gets going again back in late April. But it definitely, the pattern is slacking off. Get any surf you can while you can. You can get up in the mountains, get some snow if you can. And we'll update this forecast again next week, same time, same channel. And again, many thanks to vunabaka.com for bringing this forecast to you, and visit their site, vunabaka.com.